It's been the worst time of my life, Joe. If somebody accused me of raping them or hurting them, I have a 22-year-old daughter. I would never hurt anyone.
Some stories in Hollywood begin with a standing ovation and end in complete silence. Clifton Powell's story is exactly that. A journey that carried him from the broken streets of Washington, D.C. to the biggest screens in America, and then through a years-long legal storm that nearly took everything he had spent a lifetime building. The sentence is final now. The battle is over. But the question that remains is whether Hollywood, and the audience that watched him rise, ever truly understood the cost of what happened to this man. To understand why this moment matters, you have to go back to the beginning, not to the red carpets or the film sets, but to the neighborhood in Northeast Washington, D.C., where Clifton Powell grew up with very little and decided very early that he wanted something different. He attended H.D. Woodson Senior High School before transferring to the Duke Ellington School of the Arts, a move that signaled something, a young man choosing creativity over the easier, darker paths that surrounded him. He went on to graduate from Emerson College in Boston, earning a degree that few from his neighborhood ever got the chance to pursue. Every step he took required him to outwork the circumstances he was born into, and that discipline became the engine of everything that followed. His acting career began quietly in the late 1980s, with small roles that barely registered on the radar. But Powell was patient. He understood something that many young actors never figure out in time, that longevity in this business belongs to those who can actually act, not just those who look the part. His early appearance in House Party in 1990 gave audiences their first real glimpse of his presence. 3 years later, Menace II Society announced him to the world. His raw, unsettling energy in that film was impossible to ignore. He was not playing a character. He was inhabiting one, and the difference was visible in every frame. The Friday film series cemented his place in popular culture. As Pinky, a character equal parts menacing and darkly comedic, Powell demonstrated something rare, the ability to make an audience laugh while keeping them slightly afraid at the same time. His timing was precise, his delivery unpredictable, and his screen presence undeniable. Fans did not just enjoy his performances, they remembered them. Long after the credits rolled, Powell's face and voice stayed with audiences in a way that most supporting actors could never achieve regardless of how hard they tried. By 2004, Powell had reached the peak of his critical recognition. His portrayal of Jeff Brown, the loyal road manager of Ray Charles, in the acclaimed biopic Ray starring Jamie Foxx, earned him a nomination for an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Motion Picture. That nomination placed him alongside Hollywood's most respected performers and validated what his most devoted fans had always known, that Clifton Powell was not simply a reliable supporting player, but a genuinely gifted actor whose contributions elevated every project he joined. He appeared alongside Eddie Murphy in Vampire in Brooklyn, worked with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker in Rush Hour, and accumulated a filmography that stretched across more than 100 credits in film and television. From Dead Presidents to Why Do Fools Fall in Love, from Black Lightning to The Family Business on BET, he kept working, kept showing up, and kept delivering. He also lent his voice to one of the most iconic characters in video game history, Big Smoke in Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, a role that introduced him to an entirely new generation of fans who may never have seen his films, but knew his voice instantly. This was the scale of his reach. Across films, television, and interactive entertainment, Clifton Powell had built a name that traveled. Then came the event that would define a painful chapter of his life. In August 2011, a woman using the pseudonym Kiani Myers filed a complaint against Powell, alleging that an encounter in a New Orleans hotel room had crossed from consensual into something she did not agree to. Powell denied the allegations completely and immediately. The criminal investigation that followed was closed due to a lack of evidence. The lead detective assigned to the case, Damita Williams of the New Orleans Police Department, swore in an affidavit that she had found Myers' claims to be unfounded, specifically stating that when she asked Myers directly whether she had been forced or intimidated into sexual intercourse with Powell, Myers replied that she had not been. That finding was significant. It was not an ambiguous conclusion. It was a detective, under oath, stating that the core of the accusation did not hold up to scrutiny. Despite the criminal case going nowhere, Myers pursued a federal civil lawsuit, seeking over $150,000 in damages. This is where the story became deeply complicated and deeply unfair for Powell. He was not properly served with a lawsuit and was unaware that a civil case had even been filed against him until he read about it in the press. Because he did not respond to a lawsuit he did not know existed, a default judgment of $150,000 was entered against him. He had been found liable for something he denied doing, in a proceeding he did not know was happening. When Powell secured new legal representation and brought these facts before the court, Federal Judge Sarah S. Vance vacated that default judgment. The inconsistencies in Meyer's account, combined with the fact that Powell had never been properly served, led the court to clear the default. Eventually, after 4 years of legal entanglement, the civil case was thrown out entirely. There was no criminal conviction. There was no civil judgment that stood. By any legal measure, Clifton Powell was cleared. But the damage had already been done, and it was severe. Powell spoke openly about what those years cost him. In an emotional conversation with TMZ after the case was dismissed, he recalled specific television roles that disappeared after the allegations became public. He described landing a part that was supposed to run for 7 or 8 episodes, only to be quietly removed after the second, with no formal explanation beyond the shadow of the accusations. Producers who had previously called him, without hesitation, suddenly grew silent. Casting agents who once considered him a reliable choice began to weigh the risk of association. The entertainment industry, built as much on reputation and perception as on talent, effectively sentenced him before any court had reached a conclusion. He described the period as one of the most painful of his life. A man who had worked his entire career to earn trust, now watching it erode in real time, not because of anything a judge had ruled, but because of what the public had decided to believe. He was trying to protect his children from headlines that painted him as something the courts never found him to be. He walked through his own life under a cloud of suspicion that no legal exoneration could fully lift. As he told interviewers, the worst part was not the legal process. It was the erosion of his name among people who had never sat in a courtroom and never heard the detective's affidavit. There is a wider truth buried inside Powell's experience that the entertainment industry has never honestly confronted. The standard for destroying a career is far lower than the standard for proving guilt. An accusation published in a headline moves faster than a court dismissal printed in a legal filing. The headline reaches millions. The dismissal reaches far fewer. By the time a man has been cleared, the damage to his professional life has already compacted into something permanent. Powell did not lose his career entirely. He continued working in independent films and television, building credits through sheer persistence, but the trajectory that might have carried him to leading roles and consistent studio work was disrupted at a critical moment. He also navigated systemic barriers that existed independently of his legal troubles. Powell spoke candidly about colorism in Hollywood, about being told directly by producers and network executives that he was too dark for certain roles. In one instance, he recalled being told that his complexion might frighten viewers, a statement that reveals the specific and humiliating way in which race and appearance were used to limit his opportunities. He was celebrated for playing menacing or villainous characters, praised for the authenticity of his presence in hard-edged dramas, yet excluded from roles that required the audience to sympathize with or root for the character. The industry found a use for him that stopped short of giving him his full due. Through all of it, the legal battle, the lost roles, the financial pressure, the public suspicion, Powell kept going. He mentors young people who want to enter the entertainment industry, sharing the knowledge he accumulated across 4 decades in front of the camera. He continued appearing in projects across television and independent film, refusing to disappear quietly. His role in Saints and Sinners for Bounce TV, his recurring work in The Family Business on BET, and his appearances in The Last OG and Hawaii 5-0 all demonstrate that the determination which carried him out of Northeast Washington never actually left him. What the final resolution of his legal situation confirms is something worth saying plainly. Clifton Powell was never convicted of any crime. The civil case against him was dismissed. The detective who investigated the criminal complaint said the claims were unfounded. Every legal proceeding that examined the accusations reached the same place. There was not enough to hold against him. That is the factual record, and it deserves to be stated without softening. What it also confirms is how much was taken from him in the years between the accusation and the dismissal. The time cannot be recovered. The roles cannot be reclaimed. The years when he should have been at the height of his earning power and creative visibility instead became years defined by legal fees, public suspicion, and the slow work of rebuilding what had been torn apart. Clifton Powell is 69 years old now. He has 2 children and 2 grandchildren. He has more than 100 credits to his name. He voiced one of the most famous video game characters of a generation. He earned a nomination that placed him among Hollywood's finest performers. He survived a neighborhood that swallowed many of his peers, a legal ordeal that would have broken men with far less resolve, and an industry that often values perception over fact. The sentence is final. The story, however, belongs to a man who was never going to let it define him completely, and that part of the story is still being written.